Welcome to the Real Estate Women's Podcast. Thanks for pulling up a chair to our roundtable discussion. Here, we'll teach you how you can create a stream of passive income through multifamily investing, and we'll help you to shift your mindset so you can start living the life you really want to be living by design today. Hello, welcome to the Passive Investing Podcast. My name is Colleen.
I'm Tamara.
And I'm Crystal, and we are the Real Estate Women. So in today's episode, we wanted to discuss with you guys how you can add additional streams of income to your rental property. So we're talking maybe you've had a multifamily property for a few years and you have been great about keeping your rents, at market rate. So there's really not that room there for you to just raise rents to increase the income. So one of the things you can do, of course, is look at different ways of adding additional streams of income to your rental property. So today we're going to brainstorm some of the ways to boost that bottom line, but in fair and widely accepted ways. So Tamara, what do you think is one of the most common ways to add that first additional stream of income to a multifamily rental property?
Well, I'd like to start with the area of pets. People say, I know my dogs are like my family. And so I would say a pet fee. They can be messy or sometimes, especially puppies, destructive, in that puppy phase. So adding that fee, I would say, or adding actually even accepting pets to your rentals. Maybe you started out with no pets. And so maybe you found that you would attract different or more different people that would rent your property if you accepted pets to your property.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's that really opens up your, the net of who you can have in there. And there's definitely some pros and cons with that, I think. And I would also say different ways you can do that, because I'm sure some of the first questions people are asking are like, okay, well, how much do I charge for pet rent? Like, is a cat the same price as a dog? Do you have a universal fee? And then of course there's the initial pet fee. I know personally, we like to start with a non-refundable pet fee because, like you said, those little puppies or animals, they can be destructive. So I do think for all landlords, it's really important to safeguard yourself, because a lot of times if you have a pet wreaking havoc, it might not, just that security deposit might not cut it. So that additional non-refundable pet fee is there as a good safety net for you. And I think it encourages, it kind of reminds people that, okay, pets can be destructive and I have to keep on top of it. But what would you say, Colleen, is like a fair dollar amount for in your area, at least for monthly pet rent?
Yeah, I know we've charged pet fees in some of our properties, and a fee and rent. I want to say it was like maybe 200 or 250 down when initially when you signed your lease. And then I want to say it kind of depended on the dog or the numbers of dogs. And obviously we still had breed restrictions, right? My insurance company still did not want people having, the certain, unfortunately, pit bulls, Rottweilers, things like that get a bad rap. So there were some dependent upon things like that. I've even seen some people that will accept pets up to 25 pounds, up to 30 pounds, because they don't want in a small apartment, somebody to come in there with a mastiff. But I mean, I would say, and if you're implementing this at first, maybe you don't want to jump to something huge, but even if you get $25 a month, $30 a month for somebody's pet, it's a little something. Nobody's going to give away their dog over $25 a month. That's like we've all said, that's your family member, right? So,
right.
And then you can always reevaluate it later and maybe bump it up a little bit more, especially if you see, wow, you know what, now like 50% of my tenants have pets. Like there's a big market for this. Maybe I'm going to charge a little bit more, or so, I think you just kind of have to look around at what other people charge, but I don't think for 25, 30, maybe even $50 a month, depending upon where you live, somebody's going to get rid of their dog.
So true. So true. And I think it's relative to like the class of property that you have, right? If you have a smaller apartment, I know that was a newbie mistake that we had made. We did your typical no aggressive breeds like the insurance requires, but we didn't think about a pound size, like top max 30 pounds. So not having that, it was like, okay, well, that's not an aggressive breed, but that's a lab, and there was no space for that in the apartment. So that was like definitely a newbie mistake that we had made, was not
And it's
saying like 30 pounds or below.
yeah.
That's
And it's
definitely,
upstairs, jumping on the floor, creating noise in the downstairs apartment. You got to think about all those
Mhm.
things, you know. Then you got the person downstairs calling you saying this person's got a dog, it's so loud. So, yeah, you do have to weigh all of that, you know.
yeah, definitely, definitely. But I agree. I think that's definitely one of the most commonly widely accepted streams of income. And I think even if you started not charging rent and you have some tenants in there that have pets already, I don't think anybody would really have a problem and be
Mhm.
really too upset at first, obviously, about starting to add pet rent, because it's so widely done. Like, it's really rare. It's hard
Mhm.
to find places that accept pets, never mind to find a place that accept pets and doesn't charge pet rent. So if you're that unicorn, if that's your apartment right now and you have pets and you're not charging that, know that maybe they'll be a little upset, but have them look around. Have them to do their market research a little, and they'll quickly realize that it's a total common thing and a necessity, really, because those destructive puppies, they'll get you. But what else, Tamara? What else do you think is like a really good
Well,
additional stream of income?
I would say, if there's not garages, I would say the covered parking. Um, if there's structures there, and even if there's not, I think it's a good value add to build it if the space allows. Um, because parking and, again, depending on where the climate, where you live, and all that, I think that's a factor. Um, but I would say the next thing would be parking.
Yeah. That's definitely a good one, because I think even if like you don't have space for a structure, I know where we're from down here in Mass, like we have a lot of like three family units and they're kind of close, but there is a driveway. But maybe originally you were just giving the driveway to somebody. Well, you should
Right.
get to the point where like, okay, guys, we're going to start charging for the driveway. Who wants the driveway? Have that. That's a really good additional stream of income. I'm sure you can find a very democratic way to do that. But I think that's a really good option, and it varies widely. And I know I would totally pay to not have to worry about having my car parked on the street and the struggle it can be in the cities around here to find a street spots and
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. Well, and not only like to back it up to garage, like that garage also for some people is storage. And that is another thing people, have sometimes as a storage unit or a storage closet or something with it. But around here, like, I've seen several apartment complexes where the people there have kids because right outside their front door, there's four bicycles, there's a scooter, and one, it's a theft thing. Nobody wants their little kid's bike getting stolen. So if you could rent out a garage 50 100 bucks a month, kind of depending, or a storage unit, something there, that is certainly something that, especially in my opinion, people with kids, like, just because you have to move into an apartment or that's where you're starting out doesn't mean you don't have stuff that needs a place to go.
Yeah, storage, that's a really good line item there. Adding storage, be it the garage or maybe basements. Maybe you have storage in the basement
Mhm.
and you maybe weren't letting anybody, put their stuff down there for worries of theft. Well, a small investment, putting up some partitions, some walls, adding a lock to that,
Mhm.
that can, if you have a typical, maybe I'm just where we have a lot of three units here, so that's where or my default. You have that three family, put some walls up in that basement. Well, that's three storage unit you've just created. And
Totally.
that can add
Yeah.
up.
And seriously, think about it. You hire somebody and what for $2,000 in some lumber, some walls, some labor. What I mean, you got three storage units you're renting out for 50 or 100 bucks a month. You easily get that money back, in not that many months.
Yep, and I
Yeah,
think
a good amount in our area is more even using like fencing material
Hmm.
to do that in the basements and that, and then to partition it with that. Because I mean, you know, or just whichever's most economical. But I mean, it doesn't per se, if it's boxes and storage, have to have that privacy factor.
Correct. Just has to keep people's stuff safe, secure.
yeah,
Yeah.
And I think that
Exactly.
adds a lot of value to your property because a lot of people do have storage. I mean, just thinking about holiday stuff, like to be able to advertise your property with storage available on site. So nobody
Mhm.
has to deal with having the Christmas tree tucked in a closet or any of their decorations. Like that's a big value add when you're talking like a 2 or 3 bedroom unit. When you have, if you get to 2 or 3 bedrooms, that's probably going to be a family. There's going to be kids. So there's holidays and all that stuff. So, you got to remember to also, you're not just adding additional streams of income for yourself, but that's adding value to your property. That's adding value to your tenant. Now tenants can have their pets with them. Tenants can have their own designated parking spot. They can have their belongings somewhere safe, tucked away. So while obviously it's great for you to create that additional streams of income, but it adds convenience. And I think another huge convenience around here, that everyone wants is laundry. Because when you're in those multifamily units, going to the laundromat is no fun. So I think if you have the ability to put a couple washer and dryers down there and, feel out your tenant base, maybe you want to add coin ops, or maybe you don't want to deal with the hassle of going to get the coin ops and you just want to charge everybody a laundry fee if that's allowed in
Mhm.
your area. Because remember, every different state has different rules and tenant laws. So be aware, like maybe you're not allowed to charge a laundry fee, but maybe you increase your rent by $50 and say now you get laundry. Because as long as you're not saying you're adding a laundry fee or an electricity fee, because that's a thing here in Mass. There's a lot of different little rules like that. We can't do rubs and all that stuff, which we'll probably chat about because it's a good way. But we can't do that around here. So thinking about adding it to your rent is totally doable because, again, it's adding value to that rental unit. So
I think the word that you said that's would resonate with most people is just, your time. That time goes by so quickly, so that convenient factor with the things that we've talked about so far. Um, well, excluding the pets. I mean, you can't put them in a storage unit.
create
So,
rental business.
but the other things, it's all about convenience and, living simply, instead of like having maybe a storage unit off site.
Yeah. Well, and then when you when you talk about convenience, there are some facilities now that offer, a weekly or a monthly fee for trash pickup. So, the night before
Mhm.
trash day, you put your trash just outside your door and somebody will come and collect it and they'll bring it to the dumpster. So if it's pouring rain out, you're not doing it. If it's freezing cold and it's snowed 2 feet, you're not carrying your garbage out. So like you said, that's a convenience thing. Not all units. That's generally a class A, B, something of
Mhm.
that. It's
Mhm.
a you know, maybe a nicer, newer, more updated, facility in a newer area, that kind of stuff. But that is a convenience that some people love.
Well, and also I think it's keeping the property looking good for the new potential tenants coming through, and just I think that's a
Actually, now that you
double.
mention that, yes, because if you've ever seen the
It's
way some people carry their half ripped bag out of their apartment across the parking lot and do one of these up into the dumpster and half the stuff falls out all around the dumpster.
huh
You're right.
huh.
It's somebody else professionally collecting it and
Hmm.
placing it in the dumpster, eliminates a lot of the trash that just blows around the complex.
Yeah. Definitely. I'm just envisioning like all that stuff because you're totally right. Like heaving it up and oops, it didn't make it, but they just dropped it. So you could actually end up saving a good bit of money in the end, having somebody pick up all that trash, especially when we're talking,
Hmm.
larger, like they said, complexes, those class A type properties that's
Hmm.
definitely popular. And it's convenience. Like this, we are all built on convenience, and any way you can buy back your time, I think is just so good to have that extra ability. And it might not be right for some small cities, it might not be right for a 2 or 3 family, or maybe it is. Maybe you have a 5 unit property, but it's like really high end 5 units. So don't think it's just for those big um giant properties. You could even, I would say, feel it out with your tenants. I think there would be nothing wrong to send out an email
Hmm.
blast saying, hey, we're thinking of adding this service. Is anybody interested in it? And
Mhm.
maybe they are, maybe they aren't, but you
Yeah.
never know unless you ask. So
Yeah. No, I agree. And look into your demographics there, right? Because you've got some like your elderly people who can't physically lift it, who can't hurl their trash into a dumpster. For them, 10 or $15 a month or something to have you come and get it, like may just be easier for them. They may not, they may struggle to do that themselves. So if that's a service you provide, to them, that may be very helpful.
Yeah. Yep. And that sets us
Uh,
up to a whole nother like bracket when it comes to the big class A's, the ultimate inconvenience. Some places have like package concierge. If maybe you have a front desk area and you have a big multifamily, really big multifamily, and you have that main area, some apartments will charge to have that package delivered right to your door, so nobody has to go to that front desk essentially to get their package. So um, there's a really wide range of properties and a wide range of options, but I think being creative and always think of like, how can I make my tenant's life more convenient? Because that's really it. If you can provide or add a service, obviously people will pay and you can charge for services you provide. And it's not just doing things like hiking up the rent, you're actually adding real value to your tenants, which I think is super, super important. You always have to remember anytime you add an additional stream of income to yourself, it has to benefit your tenants in some way, because if you're not creating a win-win situation, your tenants aren't going to stay long. You have to always remember that in the back of your mind. Win-wins are like the go-to. At least that's how I like to think about it. What about you guys?
Win-win had already entered or crossed my mind a couple times that we've in this discussion, so I would concur and say ditto to what you've been saying and what you said about that,
Nice. And how about
because it's just not it's not just the bottom line, like you said. You want people to feel safe and feel that they're valued, and then that's where, and then it's also another stream of income, which the average tenant would understand that you have to make money to the bottom line. So
Yeah. And I think a really another way, of course, you can do that is by decreasing expenses, because the bottom line, you don't always have to add income. You can decrease your expenses. And that kind of goes back to like the other thing I had mentioned, the RUBS, ratio utility billing systems. While in Massachusetts, you can't do it. We do have properties in Pennsylvania where it's allowed. But how about for you guys? In your area, is that a common, widely accepted thing? And how does that usually go in your neck of the woods?
yeah, I mean, I've seen facilities here do it. And generally, I know that there are services you can hire out to figure it out because there are some legalities behind it. You can't just be like, oh, I'm going to charge everyone $100 a month for electric. I don't think you can profit off of it more than what it's actually costing you as the landlord to
mhm.
supply. So, you do have to go about it in the right way. But I have seen things where they go by bedrooms. So, one bedroom, you're going to pay $25 a month for your water, for say, because the landlord pays all the water. So,
Mhm.
one bedroom might be $25 and a two bedroom might be 35 or something. And that is all calculated. There are groups and companies you can hire to do that for you and calculate the usage out to, I've heard the square foot, or I've heard the number of bedrooms. There's a bunch of different ways to do it, but that way you are being as close to fair across the board, but you are recouping some of what you as the landlord are paying out for the tenants to use water. At the same time, as a tenant, if you realize that you're going to have to start paying for your water, which before was free, you may not let it run as much. You may not do as much laundry when it's not needed. You may not take a half an hour shower. So, like there's good for the for the environment too, some conservation thing, but also for the landlord to get some money back. How about you, Tamara? How about in your area?
In our area, it's so Michigan, it's pretty. I mean, in the I would say 30 units and up, 25 units and up, somewhere in that, it would be accepted. And the calculation, exactly what you were describing, Colleen, it's the same. The percentage can only go so high. And from basically, my experience has been, if it's going to be something, it's easier, or it's what more well received if it's something you're already using. versus like maybe a rent increase because that utility or whatever has gone up, and it's easier to explain that, look, it's something you're using, it's something that, relatable, and
Exactly.
it's more received than
Yeah.
maybe a rent increase once, every year.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm
Yeah,
so
no, agreed. And as a landlord, your only other option is to go out and sub-meter
Yeah,
everything, which
exactly.
right,
sometimes you can't do,
correct,
or you're talking about replumbing a place.
correct,
You're talking tens or hundreds of thousands depending upon how many units and what needs to be done. So
totally.
that's not always realistic.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. But there is definitely electricity. I know for us in some of our areas, the water bill always gets there. But when you have some older buildings that we have, it's one central electric meter for like multiple, for like
Mhm.
all the apartments or all of the commercial units for us in particular.
Right,
And, it's like, at what point is it like you said, there's only fair and legal ways on how much you can charge, but maybe it does make sense. Maybe it makes sense to go in there, call an electrician, to see, okay, how can I get this wired appropriately to add that meter? A lot of times, also, you're the electric supplier might come out and supply the meters for you and all that type of stuff. So it's definitely something to weigh your options. Like you never know unless you really make all the calls, do your research. Like maybe you should add, rubs. Maybe that ratio utility billing system is something that works for you. Or maybe you're better off just, adding the electrical meter in each apartment because maybe it's 3 or 5 electrical meters. Maybe it adds up. How much is your electric bill? What is that costing you? And if you could completely get rid of that, what would that mean for your bottom line? So it's definitely something to evaluate, look at, see what you have going on, and to see what makes the most sense. And what else, guys? What other like
Yeah.
fun things? There's always like the cool things like vending machines. Like I've always thought like how cool it'd be to have like a vending machine in the hallway and all that stuff. Because those are things that can like totally add value. Like you've ever been like, oh, it's 10 o'clock at night and I want some chocolate so bad. But if you had that, vending machine in the basement, like a lot of people would probably head downstairs to get that chocolate bar in the middle of the night because they're craving it and they just don't have it. So those are always some fun things that I always thought would be like, it would add value. It's nice to have. And they say vending machines can be pretty profitable. Do you guys have any experience or thoughts, or is that something common around your area?
Yeah,
I
I mean, I
don't
don't
have
really think it's
experience other than, I don't have experience in the multifamily space, no.
no,
But
other than
oddly, my
occasionally using
family,
one.
we growing up, we own vending machines, so it's just
Cool.
yeah, that we had in office buildings and, laundromats, so
Yeah. However, I do feel like if you're gonna do a vending machine, do the ones that accept cards too, because sometimes people just don't have cash and then you're not
totally.
helpful.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh my God, you totally struck a nerve with me. I didn't even think about that, but there is nothing worse than like walking by a vending machine. You want to get a snack. Your little one says, yes, let me get something. Oh, well, it's cash only, but I don't have cash. I never have cash. And if I do, it's going
I
to be a high
know.
bill because it's like an emergency cash. I don't have just like a one
Yeah.
or two ones or something. So yeah, good call.
You
Make
mean
sure
you
everything,
don't have the quarters for the payphones anymore either?
you know, my credit card usually stays at home. I don't know what's wrong with me.
Yeah. Oh, so then there's a fun one to talk about here. It's a way to add income, but nobody likes it and everybody will argue with you about it. And that'd be late fees.
Oh, yes.
And sometimes I
Yes.
feel like that's hard as a landlord, especially if you've gotten in the habit of not charging it and letting people get away without paying it.
Mhm.
It's hard to reverse that. It's hard to put the brakes on. But you know what? It comes down to the contract, right? Like, what does your lease say? When are you going to pay it by? And what are the consequences if you don't pay it? And if you're letting people pay 10 or 15 days late every month without a financial consequence, I mean, shame on you. They're going to take advantage of you. So I have seen people do $5 a day for every day it's late and stuff. And I'll tell you that gets people to pay on time.
Yeah. I will definitely say I am pro late fee. Definitely. And it's not for the income. Like the late fee income to me is like oh my God, I have to save this in case I have an eviction. Like that's like an emergency fund because once you start doing late fees, that's like a red flag. So I think late fees are
Hmm.
necessary because I relate it back to having kids, because if, like you said, Colleen, if you let them keep going without any consequence, they're just going to keep doing it and they're going to take advantage of you. But if there is a financial consequence, and if they're fully aware that this is their responsibility, and you get late fees in every other thing you have to pay. You don't pay your electric bill, you don't pay your credit card bill. Rent, for some reason, a roof over our head goes, people take advantage of it. It's like, I'll pay it last because there's no consequence. They're not going to kick me out. It's too hard. For some reason, I feel like a lot of tenants have that mindset. I'm not saying all, but I'm saying I've definitely run across quite a few that have that in the beginning, in my newbie stage when we just started. But once you start treating your rental property like a business, you'll realize that late fees are a must, because it sets the standard. It says, this is my business. This is not my hobby. I purchased this property. I have a mortgage to pay, and you have to pay your rent. And I personally think that it's definitely one of those things people think like, oh, landlords get late fees, that's a bonus. No, it's not. It's a necessary evil, and that money stays there just in case for that one time an eviction comes up, and that's not free. So, and it's fun, even though.
Well, you spoke about the mortgage. I mean, with your list of things that there's late fees, I mean, if you pay a mortgage late, yes, there's, a little bit of a grace period, but that's what most leases have, is that grace period. Maybe 5 days is the standard or norm in my area. But there's a saying of someone I used to do business with, the bank doesn't care, not to be cold, but they really, love doesn't buy lunch and the bank doesn't care.
It's so true.
You are 1 minute over when it was to be paid. You are getting that late fee.
Right.
No, I totally believe in the grace period. And make sure if you're thinking of implementing late fees, check out your laws, because like we operate in Massachusetts and Pennsylvania. Well, Pennsylvania is super lax. Massachusetts, not so much. You have to have at least 10 days grace period. It's a maximum monthly of $250, where Pennsylvania has none of that. So know your stuff, because if you charge a late fee and you're not allowed, or you're charging it before you're allowed, or it's even $1 over what you're legally allowed, and you try to get that person evicted, well, then there's the red flag on you. There's all these things that's going to go back to, oh, well, you're not operating your business, your rental property correctly. So before you ever implement any of these streams of additional income, check your laws. Quick, simple Google search. Can I do XYZ late fee in my state? It will save a ton of headache for yourself. It's so important. But run your rental property like a business. Even if it's not your main business, it is a business. That is your business. It's your investment business. So treat it as such. And obviously, if you're looking at adding additional streams of income, you're probably doing that anyway, because you're looking at it as a business, trying to beef up that bottom line. So kudos to anybody listening.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this was a great conversation, guys. We discussed so many different ways that you can implement additional fees or charges, to boost your bottom line, to create some additional returns, from the pet fees and the garages, the storage, the vending machines, the laundries, the late fees, and go on and on and on. But there's so many different things. And even if you just start with one and add one this year and one next year, it's definitely a way to boost your bottom line without always increasing your rent. But we just wanted to say thank you to you guys, our listeners, for joining us at the roundtable today. And if you want to learn more, you could check us out on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, or our website, therealestatewomen.com. Thanks.
The information contained in this podcast is for educational purposes only. We are not licensed professionals and do not give investment advice, tax advice, or other professional advice. Please consult a licensed professional before making any financial decisions.